You said you don't use email and no phone. How to connect with the fast-changing modern world?
I think a lot of what people do with technology is very trivial, actually, and very, it's just filling time. I value the discipline of just doing nothing and thinking and just trying to puzzle out what it is you're working on.
你是特别挺诺兰的是吧？
肯定打3分吧。
那你比如你们分析，就是他成为一个就是那种所谓的上神坛那样的后面那个整个的社会心理原因是什么呢？
他的2大方法，一个就是他的叙事，在技术方面他很成功；第二个方法就是哲学。比如说，在这个黑暗骑士，就是在2艘船上，一帮是正常的市民，一个是囚犯，让他们互相拿着这个遥控器可以引爆对方的船只。他其实就是把这样一个哲学史上很著名的电车难题拉过来，在讲思想，在讲观念，给你植入一个概念，这样的话给观众的体验是焕然一新的。就很多导演他拍的那种想表达哲学的电影，非常小众、晦涩、深奥，看着就容易睡着的那种。但是诺兰，我从来没有感受过电影原来有这样的功能。可能在这方面，我觉得诺兰的电影是让人感觉到非常值得去推崇的。
那你这么挺他？
对，
我不同意，我当然不同意。
你说，
蝙蝠侠为什么跟别的那个片子不太一样，对吧？是对自我的怀疑，这就是他贯穿的一个状况。但这个东西其实特别泛。奥德赛不也是这样吗？奥德赛也在怀疑自己该不该回家，该不该这样。那哈姆雷特也怀疑自己。所有的一个家庭剧里面都会有的这样。我经常爱拿我的前半生来举例子，把一个角色和那个朗拿多·提卡普里奥一样，重塑自我，重新找到自我的故事，没什么区别。我经常讲电影，它应该分为4种，仅仅从视听语言来讲的话，有点小突破，但正好又不超越我们的审美的这个台阶吧，所以说这是有气势。第二种电影是有性格，像黑泽明电影或者山帕金帕的电影，还有一种电影是有生命感的电影，最高级的电影它是有命运的电影。其实诺兰应该来讲呢是最低的那一种，他有给你的小思索，给你的小视觉，给你的什么都给你一点点，大家看到了，正好的。比我的审美高那么一点点，也不高不了那么多。
其实蛮符合这个全球化的审美。
对。
And both in movies, people are always very ambiguous about his own identity, the fictional world and the true world. Why these kind of things attract you so much? I mean, it's become your major subject to. It's from a kind of philosophical thinking of.
My favorite types of films have always somehow related to the thriller genre. I like that form of storytelling, and because the camera pretends to be objective,
yes,
but it's not. You know, it's very subjective, particularly if you choose to use it in that way. And so, the great masters of suspense like Hitchcock and Clouseau, they understood how to manipulate, how to align an audience's perceptions with one character or another, with their sympathies going to one character or another. And I think that stories in which you can't take identity for granted, even the identity of the narrator, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, it's a fun thing to play with.
In the past, you always imagine the future, or imagine the maybe not very concrete things. Concrete situation, but now you're facing the very concrete historical place and event. So, I mean, the two imagination are very different for you, or similar? I mean, imagine.
Well, I found it creatively. I found it invigorating because the key difference is that the world of the film, which is something you're normally, the world of the film is something in which, as a writer, I'm normally engaged in constructing. From the ground up, particularly in a film like Inception, for example, or Interstellar, the script has to create the entire world of the film and the terms of it. That part of it was already done for me in Dunkirk. That exists, it's real. And so all I had to do was research it and read about it. And so my creative process was then different. I didn't have to build that, I had to explore it. Quite honestly, the feeling of presumptuousness about making a war film as somebody who's never been to war, and it's my worst nightmare to imagine having to fight a war. I had the privilege, and my grandfather was in the Air Force, and he died in World War II. And I took my children to go and visit his grave. He's buried in France. And when you look at the gravestones of the people who actually died in this, and you think, okay, we're going to make an entertainment, we're going to make a cinematic telling of war, that's very daunting. And it's difficult to know how to go about that. And for me, the solution was to not look at Dunkirk as a war film, to look at it as a survival story. And that I felt confident of. I felt confident of being able to tell a suspenseful story about survival.
Could or should director be kind of philosopher? I mean, maybe your industry produce your own Michel Foucault, produce your own Nietzsche. Do you kind of see the parallel between them?
Well, I think for me, that would be too much of it would be too self-conscious to look at filmmaking that way. One of the pleasures of talking about the
film... But you are very self-conscious.
Well, not at different stages. So you become very self-conscious when you're talking about the film you've made, because you're being asked, you know. For me, I like to really stay focused on the story and the themes of the film. I like to try and do that instinctively rather than self-consciously. And I sort of trust that the way in which I know how to make a film technically, that if there are things that are interesting to me philosophically, that they'll be there. So for example, with Dunkirk, we've tried to make a very intense film and that was really the ambition. And so the film's attitude to war, therefore, for me, had to be not self-conscious. I didn't want to make a film that was an anti-war film or a pro-war film or anything. I wanted to make a film that presented my point of view and enjoy that.
So from the
sounds a little self-indulgent.
Yeah. Do you worry about maybe the genre, maybe the big production, maybe stifling your creativity? I mean, from following Insomnia, the different parts. Do you worry about it? Or
I don't. I mean, I have worried about it in the past. In the case of this film, I very much chose to not worry about it. I very much chose to just say this is a huge film that, for a British person particularly, it's a necessary film to be made. Somebody's going to make it. I want to be the person to make it. And so I'm a responsible filmmaker, and I try and, we made the film efficiently. We made it for a good price for the studio and everything. That was our way of kind of dealing with the practicalities. But beyond that, I did not worry too much about the scale. I just said, you know what, we're just going to make the film right, and we need planes, and we need ships, and we need thousands of people, and we're just going to make this film. And I think that was important to do, because the rational part of my brain, the sort of, the businessman, if you like,
你个人会更欣喜的看到更多的刺猬的出现，还是狐狸的出现？
我希望他们都会越来越多吧，就是做刺猬越来越难了，变得在这个时代非常难了，就是再也没有一个单一命题可以让你执着下去了。
就如果说徐老师这个外表狐狸内心刺猬的话哈，实际上除了虚荣心之外的弱点，还有一点就是他有点贪婪，就是那么多优秀的样本他都想成为，他既想成为本雅明，对吧，也想成为梁启超。
对，所以我是个非常不成熟的人格。现在好一点了，现在我觉得反正现在我意识到自己的能力有限了，我非常局限性，我只能成为我自己了。我现在开始接受这点了。以前我想成为各种人，
现在当然是他自己在不断的这个接收、抛弃，对吧？这个在升华的过程， 你中间会希望有一天你终于不提这些人吗？
为什么要不提呀？
就是
他们就是我的一部分，为什么要不提呢？难道每个人不是被上一代人滋养吗？被死去的人滋养才才变成现在？
就是六经助我嘛，就是
那是一个多么瞎扯淡的事儿！康有为那样的人，他就是受到廖平的影响，廖平受到王凯运的影响，每个人都有一套思想脉络，怎么可能假装自己是蹦出来的人呢？而且太阳底下无新鲜事，你能说出多少崭新的东西吗？
必须活在这些大师的阴影里。
我们必须承认这种阴影，在阴影中创造一点，或者假装创造一些可以超出阴影范围的东西。就像诺兰也在他的传统里面，没有那个 Kubrick， 没有这些 Ridley Scott 这些人，没有诺兰。我觉得我们做这个节目，包括做诺兰也好，我觉得我们都是在寻找某种历史仪式。这些人，他不是突然发生的。可能我不喜欢这个时代的就是很多东西，原因就是大家误以为很多东西是崭新的。就是我可能希望自己是一个给一个时代提供某种就反作用力的人，或者说相反声音的人。对。What's the most flawed part of yourself?
I don't want to go there. I drink too much tea.
From the first idea of the movie until the finish, the whole thing, the whole process, what's the weakest part of in the whole process yourself?
The weakest part?
Weakest, yeah.
Gosh. That's a difficult thing to answer because the way the job of director works is what I like about it is you're not responsible for any one thing. And so your responsibilities are spread, you get to dabble. You do a bit of everything. And so for me, it's not really about weaknesses and strengths, it's about an overall, I suppose an overall mediocrity. It's like, I have to be pretty good and kind of know quite a bit about a lot of different things. And so that's kind of fun. You don't have to be, you have experts around you. I have a fantastic director of photography. I have a fantastic designer. I have a fantastic editor and everything. And so I'm really just there to sort of, try and give them focus and try and inspire them to do their best work. And I think that's one of the reasons I really like the job of director. And so I'm not the member of the team who has to have a specific strength, a specific weakness. I sort of need to be pretty good at a bunch of different things and kind of just keep
it. Must be Fox. Is there some kind of limitation you hated, you want to overcome it?
You feel very much when you're writing, you feel the limitations of your ability. Writing, I think, more than any other aspect of filmmaking, is the one where you have a notion, you have an idea underlying, and then you're confronted with the absolute difficulty of executing that. It's very, very tough.
Are there some writers inspire you a lot?
I'm always drawn to, the writer I always point to is Borges, the Argentinian writer.
Borges, my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Also about kind of inception.
Very much.
Yeah. I'll return to a movie director. You are inspired by Ridley Scott and this compare you today's achievement with him. So how do you think about your innovation with him?
How am I doing relative to that guy? I mean, geez, not for me to say. I think that, interestingly, the thing about Ridley Scott for me that captured my imagination as a teenager and has always stuck with me is his incredible ability to create worlds, and his fascination with the visual side of filmmaking and ability to do that. And so when I started making my films, I think I pushed in a very different direction. And so my films have been more about narrative, I think, more about writing in a way. And it's almost that thing of the people you admire so much, you sort of need to do something different in a different way.
Yeah, and today's you are viewed as the representative for today's Hollywood. And how do you think about the tradition of Hollywood? I mean, from the John Ford, from the Coppola until James Cameron until you. I mean, you're part of tradition, or how do you define the tradition, and do you contribute something different in the tradition?
Well, I think it comes back to everybody here wanting me to talk about judge myself. Well, no, it's very tough. What I feel a responsibility to do, what I'm trying to do, is add something to that development or that evolution. But I would be lying if I said I knew what it was that I could or had done. I've been very gratified by some of the responses to Dunkirk, where people have felt that it is different, or that it adds something a little bit different to what a summer blockbuster from a Hollywood studio can be, whatever. The thing I've tried to do was I played a very big part in the growth of or the dominance, I would say, of superhero films, of franchise properties and everything, and that was an incredibly important thing in my career. I've always tried to balance that side of my filmmaking with original films and bring things that aren't familiar to an audience. But it's difficult. I mean, in television, everyone always talks about how great TV is today and how amazing it is and how much better it is. But I think films, we have the opposite. You look at it and you say, well, if this film doesn't have some unique point of view to it, if it doesn't have a strong point of view, it's not going to be interesting to people of today.
Could you imagine if you were in Dunkirk, what kind of role you will be played? You will be desperate, or you will be hopeful, or brave, or cowed?
I think what the film tries to say very strongly is we cannot know until we are faced with the situation. We like to think that we would behave in a noble way. I wanted to be more real than that. Human beings, we're very flawed creatures.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
you. Running out.
Thank you.
Yeah, next time we can talk about Borges.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is he well known in China?
Yeah, quite popular among writers and thinkers. Yeah. But good trip.
Thank you very much. Nice.
Take care. 感觉刚刚开始采访结束了。他是个超级自我分析的人，还说我们问他自我分析，他自己就是自我分析的人。他是啊。
自我分析可以养成吗？
当然了，这英国训练最重要的就是自我分析啊。
了解之后，你对他的评价比之前会高一点呢，还是说是接受存在即是合理的事实？
你比我就稍微更理解一点，他们在他们做出判断的时候没那么粗暴了。每个人每个行业里面都有他内在的脉络，我们很多外面的人看不到他内在的脉络是什么，所以这过程中帮我更理解了一些内在的脉络，其实也是帮我更理解这个社会的构成嘛。
看你一直在做技术，是现诺兰的。
他不是思想家呀，你不要就是我们不能把诺兰当成一个思想家来看待，因为这个时代可能不产生那样的人，就时代的创造力是变化的，有的时代是通过一种连续性，刚才不说了那个 hedgehog 那个刺猬是一种 consistent 这种连续性、一贯性，然后甚至一种强大的单一性带来一种力量。这个时代创造力可能是通过这种不连续性、不断的更新性、不断的这种就探求不同的这种领域、不同的角色扮演性来完成创造力的。所以创造的这个模式不一样。
他的访谈最直接的感受，
我想是不是我们对更具体的知识的无知和不了解和缺乏兴趣，使我们产生了对单一解释的一种巨大的迷恋。这背后是我们非常深沉、非常强烈的知识上的懒惰。就像我们老追求那个刺猬一样，这是我们思维的某种特性吧。我不能说完全是缺陷，是某种特性。我们老认为存在着某种单一本质可以解释很多东西，然后我们也希望某一个人成为那种单一本质的代表。这是我们思维上的困境，这是我们非常不狐狸式的思维的困 困境。我觉得我们社会很多人，包括我自己，可能我们都是非常失败的思维，我们被这种单一性所控制。我希望，我有时候想警惕这种东西，包括每集我们最后要老要追问一个东西，我不知道有时候我就怀疑这种追问吧。要对我来说，我觉得可能第2集真的不用，就是他如果云淡风轻就云淡风轻的，也不对。我想想啊。From the following until now, 20 years passed. So what's the viewpoint or philosophy on movie?
You know, I think it was Alan Parker who said all cinema is manipulation. So to call it manipulative is sort of interesting. And I guess the question is, if all cinema is manipulation, which I think it is, it's all choices, and I believe the director has a very strong ability to manipulate the perceptions of the audience. The question is, do you do films where the manipulation is apparent or where it's hidden? So, for example, with Dunkirk, a lot of the men on the beach, they were never face to face with the enemy. They were just suffering the ordnance from the enemy. They were suffering the planes coming in and dropping bombs, the mortars and so forth. That fear of the unknown closing in. I'm going to say, okay, I want to involve you in that. I want to let you know that these 3 different timelines in Dunkirk, they're running at different timescales, for example. I want you to be aware of that because I sort of want you to be constantly reminded of the limited point of view of each of the stories, that you're trapped in a subjective experience. What I do is I take that capacity for manipulating your feelings towards time and I put it foreground. That really puts you, there with those people on the beach, or puts you in the cockpit of a Spitfire, dog fighting the German planes above the beach. I'm trying to involve the audience consciously in that process, rather than it being invisible manipulation. It's honest manipulation, if you like.
What's the most flawed part of yourself?
I don't want to go there. I drink too much tea.
"我是个不合时宜的作家，着迷世界的复杂性与个体之力量。我对技术、速度与娱乐驱动的时代持有怀疑。我像个笨拙的发问者，好奇他人的观念与经验。我不喜欢模糊的立场，却也怀疑过分确定的答案。我期待自己是个游荡者，不断拓展知识与情感的边界。我也好奇，在时代浪潮之中，那些崭新的创造力、想象力正在被孕育。我会带着我的偏见与期待再次出发。
认识这么多年，还有一个话题我一直是回避的，因为就是你巨大的虚荣心哈，就是被卷入公共世界，引起一些不知道这个讨论水平高低的争议。还是你愿意促成这样的争论？有的时候因为
我兴趣不强烈，而且我整个过程中，不知道，
你肯定有自我怀疑的地方， 当下时代的一个刺猬和狐狸的话，你更希望做哪个？
Hey, nice to meet you.
Hi.
Want some tea? Or you have tea?
I brought my own. Thank you.
Good. So you must be very tired.
Not too bad. I was in Asia anyway, so I'm not jet lagged.
And how about Yeah, we start. Yeah. We start already. Fine. Don't worry.
战争片的一个新鲜体验，
不是一个传统意义上的战争片。
拍得很好，有一个很大的
很有脑洞，需要有智商人看。我们都被这个画面给吸引住了。
这片子更像 game，就是你是进去的。
对对对。
你那时候真觉得自己是飞行员。
Bandit 11 o'clock. He's on me.
但你说诺兰的非常独特的控制性呢？它的控制性过强，当然会导致会有一个很好的结果，但也导致了，就是我们想看到的更意外的东西没有出现嘛。